27 years ago, the original Silent Hill released. It was a groundbreaking swan song for the original PlayStation, a game that managed to utilize the hardware constraints of Sony's first console to its advantage, reducing the render distance by covering the titular town in a blanket of oppressive fog, and providing the series with the earliest depiction of one of its most iconic visual features. But beyond the fog-covered streets, Silent Hill 1 also provided a distinctly different form of horror. Its focus was less on creating terror through visceral gameplay and more on generating a sense of unease through a dread-inducing atmosphere. An atmosphere that felt liminal and surreal, as though we had stepped into one of our darkest nightmares. Even to this day, I still believe the original Silent Hill encapsulates this feeling incredibly well. Its decades-old graphical presentation allows our imaginations to uncomfortably fill in the gaps of its obscure polygonal horrors. And the strange, uncanny vocal performances of the characters contribute to the dreamlike atmosphere.
You were having a bad dream.
Was I?
The first entry in the series laid a very solid foundation, with Team Silent building upon its strengths when developing the sequels, retaining the art direction and surrealism whilst putting a greater emphasis on the aspects of psychological horror that can get under a player's skin, where the most terrifying elements found within these games are conjured by their protagonists' minds, externalized through monsters that reflect the darkest corners of their subconscious.
What a nightmare.
Born from relatable human experiences such as guilt, regret, fear, and trauma. Whilst Silent Hill is currently undergoing a welcomed revitalization, there was a period of time after 2014 where the series felt as though it had been indefinitely shelved. This followed the cancellation of Hideo Kojima's take on the franchise, which had an infamously disturbing playable teaser that gave us a glimpse into the creative vision's potential. Although it was disappointing to see this concept never fully realized, I was more disheartened to witness a beloved franchise begin to fade into obscurity. But during these uncertain years, there was a corner of gaming that kept Silent Hill's faint pulse alive. Indie developers that took it upon themselves to create experiences that were inspired by the franchise's most disturbing aspects. In this video, we're going to delve into one of these titles. A game that wears its inspirations on its sleeve, but also manages to step out of the shadow of Silent Hill and forge a frightening identity of its own. Lost in Vivo begins as we take control of an unnamed protagonist enjoying a mindful walk after attending a recent therapy session. We are accompanied by their faithful service dog named Dani. The session itself ended with the therapist's suggestion to undergo something called in vivo exposure, a form of guided cognitive therapy that aims to desensitize an individual from their deepest anxieties by encouraging them to confront their fears directly. This can be done gradually through a systematic approach or rapidly using a technique known as flooding. As we continue along the pavement, the weather begins to worsen, and we spot a missing persons poster. The details are hard to decipher due to the paper's damaged state, but we can make out the name of a woman named Jane. Then, a little further down the path, we find a news article lying on the ground. It reports on a discovery of shocking illegal experiments leaked by an unknown individual named Dr. B. Pushing through the now torrential downpour, our once pleasant walk is met by an abrupt and distressing end. With Dani now lost somewhere within the depths of the sewer system, we descend into the darkness to find her. Fortunately, the game provides us with a flashlight. Although it does little to alleviate the wave of claustrophobia forged from this confined space. Further down the tunnel, we're met with a junction, and the game informs us that we can whistle. Under any other circumstances, creating a loud whistle wouldn't be a cause for concern. But down here in these labyrinthian tunnels, the sound echoes and permeates through it like a vacuum. It allows us to navigate towards Dani by following her responding bark, but we can't help but wonder whether anyone else is on the receiving end, lurking down here and listening to our desperate calls. After passing through a service corridor flanked by concrete, we're given a prompt to check our inventory and browse through a collection of possessions. Their 3D models feel as though they've been borrowed straight from the original Silent Hill. It's a small design choice, but one that highlights the developer's commitment to making Lost in Vivo feel reminiscent of the seminal PS1 horror game. Taking a closer look at the flashlight, we notice a strange line of text. It states the batteries within the flashlight are long-lasting and guaranteed to last all game. This won't be the only time Lost in Vivo breaks the fourth wall. We can also see a tape titled The Pound. Perhaps we'll find a way to interact with this. Closing the menu, we then obtain our first weapon. In a nearby room, we find a note page written by a stranger who appears to be living down here. There's not much on TV nowadays, so I thought I'd make my own show. I started putting food and rancid meat in the useless old box, and all sorts of little critters would come and play. It was really relaxing to just sit on the sofa and watch them eat. But the small critters started attracting larger ones to the show. Some horrid, putrid thing kept coming by to watch. So I would just pretend to be asleep till it passed. But I think it knows I'm awake. I think it's watching me, not the show on the TV. The sanity of our author appears questionable, to say the least. Yet our mind lingers on that final paragraph. Perhaps it's purely a product of the stranger's delusional state of mind, but despite our best efforts, the words are enough to leave us with an alarming thought. What if there was something else down here with us? We then find a second note that does little to alleviate these concerns. My eyes are useless. All they do now is sting and show me stuff that can't be real. If that rancid thing wants them, then I say, let them have them. Whatever the stranger saw, it appears to have been enough to frighten him so much that he removed his own eyes from their sockets, offering them up to an apparent monster who wanted to take them. Descending further through the concrete passageway, we spot some graffiti on the wall. After being left with no choice but to defend ourselves, we take a closer look at the man who attacked us. His eyes are missing. This must be the author of the note pages, the stranger who's been living down here. It's likely he attacked us thinking we were the monster that had been stalking him. Trying to move on from this distressing encounter, we're relieved to be greeted by a familiar face around the corner. With Dani disappearing further into the depths, we push forward and reach a hole in a wall. Beside its shadowed entrance is graffiti that reads, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." This is a reference to Dante's Inferno, the 14th century narrative poem which depicts its author's journey into hell. In the same room is a paddle with the name Charon etched onto it. Charon is the name of the demonic ferryman within Dante's Inferno, one who transports the souls of the damned across the river Acheron and into hell, with this river forming the boundary of hell itself. So, in the context of our current whereabouts, it seems we have just passed through Acheron and now stand at the entrance to our protagonist's own personal hell. But Dani is in there, and we can't just leave her behind. Based on the entrance to this infernal place immediately forcing the player through a confined space, and a barrage of sensory overloading audio cues, we can assume Lost in Vivo's protagonist suffers from claustrophobia. After enduring the narrow tunnel, we emerge at a rusted metal grate surrounded by candles. Plunging into its otherworldly abyss, we carefully traverse the weathered pathway until we hear a guttural groan. The sound is emanating from strange-looking creatures trapped behind grates, wriggling in pain. Their presence serving as confirmation that our grasp on reality is loosening. Approaching a chain-link fence, someone in the darkness slides a pistol across the floor. It's damaged, but still usable. Then on the ground, we find an eyeball. This presumably belonged to the homeless man we encountered earlier. So whatever took them from him must have originated from within this nightmarish place. When exploring this section, it's almost impossible to not draw comparisons to the other world of Silent Hill. The rusted walls, oppressive atmosphere, and unsettling sights evoke that same feeling of dread I experienced when entering this nightmare realm for the first time. Like the many elements from Silent Hill that inspired Lost in Vivo, it doesn't feel derivative, but rather lovingly influenced by the source material. Walking down a tunnel, we spot Dani waiting for us in the distance. But as we get closer, the game cuts and abruptly places us within a safe room. The room is adorned by a towering, angelic-looking statue, almost as though they are granting us a moment of reprieve, sheltering us from the systematic terror. Using the save point then creates a screen effect that feels all too familiar. The statue itself is a representation of Virgil, the spirit that guides Dante through hell in Inferno, but also under the growing suspicion that what we are experiencing is our protagonist's in vivo exposure therapy. We can presume this represents the protagonist's therapist, offering them an opportunity to calm their anxiety before pushing further ahead. After leaving the safe room and walking up a sloping hallway, our surroundings become less otherworldly and more reminiscent of an abandoned metro station. By looking at the posters on the walls, we can begin to glean some insight into another psychological struggle. There are advertisements promoting a negative connotation associated with eating food. A suggestion towards a desire to lose weight, stemming from an ongoing struggle with body dysmorphia. As we approach the platform, we hear Dani barking. She is trapped on a train leaving the station, accompanied by a mysterious individual with glowing yellow eyes. Eager to catch up with them, we collect the key to the transit office and use its computer to request another train. Whilst on board, we find a diary entry belonging to an unknown woman.
I don't want to go. I just want to stay on this train. I want to stay in the dark where no one can see me.
After we are brought to an unexpected stop, we walk down the tracks and arrive at the next station, called the Royal Phantom Subway. In the corner, there's a tape player that allows us to insert the first lost tape. This tape explores an intense retelling of the protagonist's journey to collect Dani from the pound, highlighting the heightened levels of anxiety they felt as they passed by pens housing aggressive dogs. Whilst Dani would eventually provide company to the protagonist through her role as a service dog, this memory also shows us the mutually beneficial facet of their relationship, showing how Dani was rescued from her own personal hell. saving her from abandonment and away from any further distress she would have had to endure from life at the pound. Back in the subway, we enter a maintenance office and obtain a map of the station and a note. The note references how, due to being positioned in a bad part of town, this metro station received very little funding, commenting on how this financial deficit led to an insurmountable number of electrical problems, causing the employee to consider quitting their job. Pinned next to the junction box is a note providing a solution on how to restore power to the train. It directs us to switch off the various breaker boxes located within the station. Doing so will allow us to restart this main box which powers the tracks. Leaving the office in search of the breaker boxes, we find another note on the platform, but this one wasn't written by the maintenance employee. It's a diary entry belonging to the same person who wrote the note we found on the train. It reads,
I want to make a decision. I want control back in my life. I want to matter. Everybody just makes choices for me. Maybe I'll find someplace where I can be happy, someplace dark, without people to remind me how ugly I am. I'm sorry.
This diary entry hints at a harrowing and tragic event that happened here, surrounding the backstory of a woman wrestling with body dysmorphia, a condition which caused her to feel isolated and alone. Further entries reveal the depths of this suffering. As she became so distressed, she lost all sense of belonging, believing society itself had rejected her because she wasn't, in her own words, perfect like everyone else. We later learn the woman found a boyfriend who provided a loving reprieve from her loneliness. However, over time, this partner began to put pressure on the woman to lose weight, which in the moment she saw solely as an act of support. But after falling pregnant, her body naturally began to change and the conditional love from her partner worsened. He eventually told her she had become ugly and that he wanted nothing to do with her. The woman blamed the baby for the boyfriend's change of heart. And in the station's restroom, we can see the implication of what happened next. We can then learn the fate of this woman when reading a note written by the station's maintenance worker. It reads, "It was a slow day when it happened. Only 2 trains even stopped here, and I didn't see her until it was too late. I heard her sobbing as she walked down the tracks. I wanted to run and save her, but I could hear the train. I just waited and listened. She must have regretted it at the last moment, as I heard her scream. I can't stop her. She passes through the walls. All I can do is wait and listen." The ghost this story belongs to is a character called Jane, the missing person depicted on the poster during the game's introduction. Her spirit now haunts the aptly named Royal Phantom subway station, its unnerving appearance reflecting an amalgamation of Jane and the body dysmorphic version of herself she saw in the reflection. Similar to Dante's Inferno and Silent Hill, supporting characters like Jane I used to externalize different psychological struggles. Angela in Silent Hill 2, for example, possessed a different emotional turmoil to James. As such, the town of Silent Hill twisted itself into creating bespoke monsters for each of them.
Is it dead? What the hell is it?
However, when considering the possibility that Lost in Vivo's events are all stemming from our protagonist's mind, I believe it's likely there's a closer connection here. Jane is depicted as both a sympathetic character and a monster. Something which suggests the protagonist may possess the same psychological scars as Jane, with her tragic death serving as more of a cautionary tale, one used to incentivize the protagonist to keep pushing through the exposure therapy by showing us the risks of allowing our phobias to consume us. After defending ourselves from an onslaught of Jane's attacks, we collect the second lost tape. Placing it within the tape player transports us into a decrepit hospital. Whilst this memory could belong to our protagonist, I think it's more likely this is a retelling of Jane's past. In this anxiety-ridden journey through a hospital ward, Jane passes by sick and confused patients on her way to attend a pregnancy scan. Eventually, she reaches a tunnel and plummets into the depths below. She is then surrounded by disfigured strangers. Most pass us by, taking no notice, but another, despite their own disfigurement, laughs in our direction, a reflection of the pressures of Jane's body dysmorphia and how its insecurities made her feel rejected by society. Returning to the maintenance office, we restore the power. And as we head towards the platform, we're greeted by the ghost once again. After purging Jane's spirit from its disfigured state, we finally board our train. But it's another journey that is short-lived. Abruptly ended by a sudden fragmented cut that places us onto the tracks, with a wall of static blocking our way back. Walking up the tracks, we arrive at the next desolate station. This one, more ornate in its design, is called Grand Bullam Avenue. Inspecting the map, we can spot a connection between this station and the last. Built by a company called Royal Phantom Construction. It's therefore implied that what we will experience here will be an extension of Jane's suffering. In a nearby room, we find 3 eerie-looking mounted heads displayed on the wall. Interacting with each of them changes their position. We'll need to solve this puzzle if we're going to pass through to the next area. At the end of an adjacent large room is a door covered in slime. After collecting a nearby chemical compound, we try to purge it, but trip and cover ourselves in the acidic substance. Returning from the safe room, we head back to try again, although now the large room is occupied. These mirror enemies appear to be a manifestation of Jane's struggles, specifically the distress she felt when looking at her own reflection. Near the previously slime-covered door, our remains have turned into an organic puddle on the floor. It's infested with maggots. Walking back onto the tracks, we can see a train further up and a note. It reads, "Life was too harsh, love lost forevermore." They hung from a ceiling fan, staring at the floor. The note also has a face beneath the text, the same as the mounted displays. On the basis that this is page number 1, it seems we have learned that the first head needs to be pointing down. On my first playthrough of Lost in Vivo, the presence of the ghost trains completely caught me off guard. It's an effective way of utilizing a monster design to convey a specific sense of fear. In this case, it's a representation of what Jane experienced as she witnessed the train heading towards her in her final moments. Investigating a nearby restroom, we can find another note written from Jane. This note emphasizes the wave of confusion Jane felt after discovering she was pregnant, and a nervousness to inform the father of the baby. We can then find the note depicting the direction of the second mounted head. Life was too harsh, and a bridge was close by. They sank in the water, gaping for the sky. On the other side of the restroom, we collect some ammo and check each of the cubicles. Returning to the mounted heads, we find the third page. It reads, "Life was too harsh, this job wasn't fair. They laid in the assembly with a sideways stare." With this third entry, we can now solve the puzzle. Past the previously locked door, and after fending off an infestation of oversized leeches, there's a note from Jane that gives further insight into her boyfriend's reaction to the pregnancy.
All he talks about is how ugly I've become, how ugly I'm going to be. He tells me he's leaving. I feel so sick. He hates me now, and I have all this responsibility, all because of this parasite inside me. I didn't think this would happen. I just did what I was told. I wanted him to be happy with me.
It's not coincidental that shortly after reading this note, we encounter the Shoggoth, an enormous eel-like creature with humanoid limbs. My current theory is that this represents the way in which Jane perceived her unborn baby, an oversized parasite, its scale matching the weight of its emotional pressure. Alternatively, there's also the possibility this could reflect her boyfriend, and more specifically, the monstrous reaction he showed towards the pregnancy. This creature can also not be defeated, and upon meeting an end to this encounter, we're shown some dialogue between Jane and her therapist. So, how are you feeling?
I feel like everyone hates me, and I hate myself.
Your sense of self-worth is too influenced by body shape and weight. You don't judge others so harshly. You have worth. You have beauty, but you are unable to see it. Your vision of yourself is distorted.
Then how should I fix it? If I can't fix my body, then how do I fix my vision of myself?
We are working together to fix it. But I will also write you a refill for your fluoxetine. The framing of this conversation matches the exchange between the protagonist and their own therapist during the introduction. And when I first encountered this, I assumed this exchange meant Jane and the protagonist were the same character. Whilst I'm no longer convinced this is the case, it's a theory the next section does offer some supporting evidence for. We emerge from a narrow hallway into a room with 2 doors and a mirror. On the right is a depiction of conventional beauty, an unrealistic standard that Jane felt pressured to achieve. On the left is a depiction of how she viewed herself through her body dysmorphia. If we head to the door on the right, we encounter a leech. But if we decided to head left, we would have encountered no enemies. Then, upon looping back, we can see the pictures have begun to change. The unrealistic beauty standard Jane wants to achieve looks distressed and fractured, whereas the illusion of Jane's true self has begun to gain some clarity. After repeating the process once again, the pictures change entirely. The unachievable face and its pressurized emotional toll has vanished, and on the left in its place, we can see the real face of Jane, someone who deserved a better fate than the one she had. The sequence alludes to the risks of social contagion, how beauty magazines, weight loss posters, and social media can possess a frightening ability to convince someone they are imperfect, undeserving of love, even from themselves. The next puzzle compounds this idea further by demonstrating the psychological and physical impact of body dysmorphia. We enter a room with an apple in the center. To the right are vending machines that look unappealing, saturated in blood. If we eat the apple, the exit door becomes blocked. In order to get past, we have to interact with the toilet. Yet, despite granting access, we still encounter leeches on the other side. If we then try to bypass the apple entirely, we encounter one of the mirror monsters. This puzzle confirms Jane suffered from an eating disorder, and considering the name of the second train station we entered is Grand Bullam Avenue, we can make an estimated guess to the disorder in question. In order to solve this puzzle, we must eat the apple, watch as the doorway becomes blocked, and pass through it anyway. Upon doing this twice, the vending machine lose their unappealing crimson aesthetic, showing how Jane's relationship with food is improving. Then, after eating the apple for a third time, we hear a sound. It's a baby. Taking Jane's newborn provides some resolution for the character. Reuniting with the baby after realizing the child was not the source of her suffering, but another victim of her body dysmorphia and the disorder that stemmed from it. We then walk onto a train track. But rather than history repeating itself, the revitalized ghost of Jane protects us. So, are Jane and the protagonist the same character? Well, there's definitely a convincing argument to be made here, but it's not something I personally believe to be the case. Instead, my interpretation is that Jane was someone the protagonist knew very closely, but was never able to overcome the grief caused by her tragic death. And through the in vivo exposure therapy, the protagonist has managed to harness an acceptance to the loss. A peace born from the knowledge that Jane and her baby were reunited after death.
I waited in the dark for so long. I lashed out against anyone who got close, but someone kept pushing me to the light. It hurt me for a while. It doesn't hurt anymore.
After finding a torn piece of Dani's leash, we descend into the mines. There's a door with 3 indents and a camera keeping watch. I wonder who could be watching from the other side. Heading further into the depths, we hear a familiar sound. But something is very wrong. After encountering this strange shape-shifting insect, we find the first emblem. It's a beetle. From the perspective of spiritual symbolism, beetles are often used to represent transformation, a depiction which clearly inspired this monster design. But its meaning can also be attributed to the protagonist. Beetles represent spiritual transformation gained through reflection and growth. Specifically, when an individual embodies the qualities of the insect's perseverance and resilience. Traits the protagonist has been calling upon to push deeper into this cognitive therapy session, despite the emotional obstacles and escalating horror being encountered on the journey. Whilst exploring the mine, we find a hand-drawn diagram of its layout, indicating the location of the other 2 emblems. Beside this, there's also a note written by an unknown individual. This place should be empty, but the lights are on, and I hear something crawling around. Why keep the power on? Why? I can't fathom what this place even is. I've tried to map it out, but it doesn't make sense. The next emblem we find is the moon emblem. Looking closely at the shape of it, we can see it depicts a crescent moon, a phase of the lunar cycle that represents growth and new beginnings. The journey from darkness to light, emptiness to fullness. A representation of how therapy can be used to draw people back from their darkest, emptiest places. Next to this emblem is another note belonging to the stranger who was down here. I told everyone, but no one listens to me. I can't trust anyone. They're all just serving the monsters. No one is different. It's just me now. Why wouldn't they just listen? The last emblem we can find down here is the bomb emblem. This one is harder to decipher, but I think it's a hint towards the protagonist suppressing their trauma and how bottling up these emotions can be destructive. Placing the 3 emblems on the door, we step into a location owned by a corporation called Nezumi Testing. Nezumi being the Japanese word for rat. It seems we have found ourselves in some kind of research lab. Inspecting the map for this area reveals a number of labs and the offices for 2 doctors, Dr. Brundle and Dr. Piccinini. Nearby we can find an extract from the former's personal archive. Feeling good about today, progress continues almost at an alarming rate given how theoretical this all should be. Today we've had a number of smaller rodents continue to move for almost 2 hours after all of its blood had been drained and replaced with a mix of PA221215V. Looking around the facility, we find Dr. Brundle's office, but it's locked by a padlock. In a nearby computer lab, we can find an extract from the other doctor's personal archive. Dr. Piccinini writes, "My dreams have found their savior. A dark creature swabbed in dirty robes now lives within them. They eat the rats and silence the screaming. Soon I will begin the work. Not this government's rat work, but my true work. I will give birth to my savior so they can silence everything." It's currently unclear what the intentions of this research facility are, but this extract informs us it's under the government's jurisdiction. The head scientist, Dr. Piccinini, however, appears to be deviating from their direction to pursue his own scientific goals. The creation of some kind of monster that will, as he puts it, silence everything. By investigating his office, we can learn a little more about the motivation behind this. In another personal archive, Dr. Piccinini notes his struggle with the constant squealing of the rats. The sound of their anguish having such an effect on him that even when he's away from the facility, he can still hear them, shrieking in his thoughts and dreams. Then, as we enter one of the labs, we encounter one of the creations of Nezumi Testing's questionable work. After defeating the abominations, we find a doll's head in the freezer and another extract from the personal archive of Dr. Brundle. It indicates a change of heart towards the facility's ethics and his concern surrounding the ramifications of Dr. Piccinini's darker scientific pursuits. A concern that only worsened once he was shown the result of Piccinini's pet project. A monster referred to as Soterus, the Greek word for salvation. The creation of this supposed savior frightened Dr. Brundle so much he tried to flee the facility. It's also important to mention Dr. Brundle is the source of the information leak we found in the news article during the introduction. Crushing the doll's head, we obtain a picklock set from its remains, and on our way back to unlock Dr. Brundle's office, we discover the corridors are blanketed by a thick layer of fog. Unlocking Dr. Brundle's office, we step inside and find a body. It's Dr. Piccinini. When inspecting his corpse, we learn his eyes have been eaten, presumably by Soterus. But this isn't the first victim of this monster we've encountered. Soterus was the creature who stalked the homeless man in the sewers. The one he gave his eyes to. Reading another note from Dr. Brundle confirms that whatever this Soterus is, the rat creatures have been worshipping it. As we try to inspect Piccinini's corpse once again, something strange happens. The Unity engine the game was built upon looks as though it's glitching. On our way out of the facility, we pass through a door that was previously locked by a retinal scanner. Then, at long last, we are reunited with our canine companion. With Dani now in our company once again, we find a note by Dr. Brundle confirming that his fellow doctor went insane. Given the outbreak of dangerous experiments, the engine glitches featured in this location, and the nature of the two doctors' relationships, I believe Nezumi testing serves as a representation of our protagonist's fear of the unknown, an anxiety stemming from the aspects of our lives which feel uncontrollable and are often orchestrated by others. With Dani being swept down another drain pipe and our time with her being short-lived, we push through to try and find a way to get down there and rescue her. After being stalked by the corpse of Dr. Piccinini, we find a final personal archive log from Dr. Brundle. I'm almost out of here, but Piccinini's pet is in the warehouse by the emergency exit. It won't move while I'm staring at it, but when I try to look away, it seems to reappear somewhere within a closer radius. If someone finds this, please be careful, as the creature may still be around. Our encounter with Soterus is different to anything we've faced up to this point. The monster will not move so long as we maintain our vision on him. But this warehouse is full of objects designed to obscure our line of sight. Cautiously moving through the environment, we search through organic puddles looking for an item that can help us escape. Eventually, we find a missing left eye. On the walk back, we're shown a cutscene of Soterus placing this eye into one of his empty sockets. As he guards the exit, this eye remains fixated on our every movement. But thankfully, while his back is turned, we're able to creep behind and escape. In the next room, there's an elevator. Ascending upwards, we begin to feel a sense of closure. The sense that we have journeyed to hell and back and survived. With the credits now rolling, we use the time to reflect upon the frightening experience that's now behind us. But then, a thought erupts through our mind. What happened to Dani? We're barely given a moment to contemplate this, as it's followed by a break in the fourth wall, telling us something is very wrong. The name used in this moment will be different for everyone, but for me, Lost In Vivo disturbingly pulled my wife's Steam alias from my friends list. It seems this nightmare isn't finished with us just yet. Continuing forward, we enter an ordinary-looking apartment. An emblem of Dani on the wall confirms this space is a replica of the protagonist's home. Taped to a locked door is a familiar-looking note. It's the same as the one we found in the maintenance office all the way back at the Royal Phantom subway station. Heading outside, we reach a junction with 3 doors. Investigating the first room, we find a breaker box beside a narrow bridge and a pool of water. In this area, we also collect another lost tape, next to some plant pots housing cockroaches, and find a note titled Spooky Stories for Kids, Volume 1. Once there lived a nasty old man in a nasty old house. The nasty old man wouldn't go outside. The nasty old man wouldn't play. He sat in his tub and soaked in the water all day. Just him and his music, enjoying the water even though it was nasty and green. He soaked all day and every night, but he never tried to get clean. But one day, the old man couldn't find his music. His radio station filled with static. He twisted and turned and tried all the stations, and things got a little dramatic. His radio fell down into the water and he missed the off switch. And the story goes that if you visit his house, his nasty old corpse will still twitch. This short, creepy story gives us a hint for how to deal with an upcoming encounter. But before that, we find something deeply unsettling. An organic brain-like creature representing the dark thoughts within our protagonist's mind.
You're pathetic. You need fear to motivate you.
Destroying it triggers a cutscene showing the man with glowing eyes, releasing something terrifying from the depths below. With the siren now on our tail, we remember the spooky story of the old man in the bathtub. How he met his demise after a radio plunged into the water and electrocuted him. This area possesses the tools to recreate a similar scene. Playing the lost tape we found down here transports us to a hotel, searching for a place to spend the night. It's unclear who this memory belongs to, but we can speculate the possibility of this being one of the protagonist's earlier memories. After they ran away from a troubled home life, seeking shelter in the night. Struggling to find a place to rest, we encounter beds covered in bugs and others occupied by strangers. When we eventually find a clean bed and try to use it, we're awakened by an infestation of insects. This tape indicates the trials and tribulations of the protagonist trying to live away from their home. Struggling to find even the bare essentials, but choosing this life over whatever horrific situation awaits for them at home. Searching through various hotel rooms, we eventually find a chair and exhaustively collapse onto it. Only to awaken once again, but this time we're transported into an otherworldly version of the hotel. When returning to the reception, someone is waiting for us. Perhaps an abusive parent or partner, coming to take the protagonist back home by force. Past the second door, we find the second Spooky Stories for Kids volume. This story goes, once there lived a nice man with his nice dog. The nice man was content, just him and his dog, watching the years pass by. His house was old and deep in the woods, with a little blue patch of sky. One night, the nice man was walking his dog, as was his nightly habit. But then the dog got out of his leash to quickly chase after a rabbit. The night was dark, just barely lit, so the nice man was filled with worry. But then the dog yelped and ran inside as if it was in a hurry. The nice man went inside and locked up, his worries for now put to bed. But then out of the window he saw his old dog, but its skin had been shed. After reading the story, we find another depiction of the protagonist's dark thoughts.
Does doing this even have a purpose?
Silencing its grasp on our state of mind transports us back into the sewer. But we feel strange. Our movements have become constrained to tank controls. We're playing as Dani. It's incredibly eerie experiencing this section from Dani's perspective. The restricted movements and lack of defensive capabilities create an overwhelming sense of vulnerability. Trying to navigate the darkness in this state therefore gives some insight into how nervous Dani was after falling through the drain. Then, when we reach the door and the protagonist waits on the other side, we realize we weren't playing as Dani after all, but instead, as the spooky story goes, something wearing the dog's skin. Upon accidentally luring the siren to our location, and with it now trying to break through the door, we head over to the breaker box and flood the drain room, washing away the monster which had disguised itself as our faithful companion. In the third and final room, we can find a switch that opens a heavy door. The third Spooky Stories volume offers a hint towards its purpose. Once there lived a great old beast in a great old wood. The great old beast would attack the town and carry young children away. It screamed and it howled from inside the woods each night and every day. So one night, the townsfolk hatched a plan to slay the beast once and for all. They snuck up close while it slept under a tree, and then they made it fall. It growled and hissed, not moving an inch since the fallen tree held it down. The warriors fought and stabbed the old beast to finally save the town. But the stories go that if you visit the woods, that under the great fallen oak, the great old beast isn't dead at all. He just still hasn't woke. Based on this story, we can assume the weight of the great oak tree is similar to the weight of the large door. And after destroying the last source of the protagonist's dark thoughts, we ready ourselves for a final encounter with the Siren. The creature that bursted from the siren's corpse is called Childhood Memories, a name that coincides with the memory we experienced at the hotel. And through the act of killing this crawling horror, the protagonist has successfully purged the pain left in the wake of their traumatic childhood. Upon returning to the room previously housing a replica of the protagonist's apartment, we discover the room has been replaced by a long hallway. At its end, we see sunlight. It's a way out. We could take this path and reach one of the game's endings, but we'd be leaving Dani alone down here. And after everything we've endured, the progress the protagonist has made, the temptation doesn't overcome the weight of leaving with a guilty conscience. We came down here searching for Dani, and so we're not going to leave without her. Squeezing through another infernal tunnel designed to invoke the protagonist's claustrophobia, we're attacked by oversized insects. Battling through the narrow space, we enter a room and encounter another new enemy type. These tall monsters are called spitters. Upon closer inspection, we can see they have holes in their torsos. These creatures, I believe, are another representation of the weight of an empty cradle. Their open chests reflecting the malnourishment caused by the parent's eating disorder. This is further confirmed by a note we can find down here. The game claims the text is illegible, but by crouching down we can make out the words on the page. It reads,
It lays upon the branches. Dangling there is a sick reminder of what I rejected. The smug dead face stares at me, almost grinning it seems, like it's happy to be without me inhabiting it.
This could belong to Jane, serving as another manifestation of the guilt she suffered after losing her child. But I do have another theory. Considering these enemies are featured after journeying through a confined space, and that they appear at the very end of the game, I think this hints at another shared trauma between Jane and the protagonist. This would reinforce why we've been so driven to find Dani, why we have journeyed through our own circles of hell to find her. Rescuing Dani represents something greater than the importance of saving a beloved pet. It's an unyielding determination to never endure the emptiness of losing a loved one ever again. Upon reaching the ending of Lost in Vivo, the game displays the following text. You escaped the confines of the sewer and reunite with your dog. You feel that your experience has changed who you are, and that the barriers of life that once restricted and intimidated you have now fallen away. You've been to hell and back, confronted your fears, and gotten stronger. Lost in Vivo is one of the purest examples of psychological horror. A game that, much like Silent Hill, uses the subgenre incredibly well, but arguably takes it a step further by framing the entire game's events through the lens of cognitive therapy. It leans heavier on the psychological aspect, allowing the title to not only borrow from the subgenre, but to leave its own mark on it as well. Considering the surreal and fragmented structure that arises from this design choice, there is so much that is open to interpretation. In this video, I've offered what I personally believe to be the hidden meaning behind the game. A journey through which the protagonist has overcome their struggles with claustrophobia, body dysmorphia, the fear of the unknown, childhood trauma, loss, and grief. But what are your thoughts on what we've uncovered here? I'd love to hear your interpretation. And if you're interested in playing Lost in Vivo for yourself to piece together more of this mystery or experience one of the game's hidden endings, I've included a link in the description. Whilst the ending we experienced is widely considered to be the intended resolution, there is another that connects to Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion, the previous game made by developer Akuma Kira. Thanks for watching, and all the best for now. I look forward to journeying into the void of you again very soon.